हरे कृष्णा। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा. So I extend a very warm welcome to all of you who have come to rejoin us back in the part 2 of this course, Rediscovering Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So hopefully you all have already gone through the first 5 sessions of part 1. So we are starting part 2 now. There is a slight change. Some devotees felt that 1.5 hours is little long. So we have trimmed it off now. We will have only 1 hour sessions every day from 11 p.m. to 12 p.m. So, I'm sorry, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. in the afternoon, Indian Standard Time. So, we will, as you all might know, and I hope that you all have seen the first 5 sessions. So, this will be a continuation from where we left off. So, for those of you who might have already seen the part 1 but don't remember much, I will do a quick recap of what we have seen and then we can continue from where we left off. So as I mentioned last time, basically this is a detailed overview of the eastern section of, not even the complete eastern section, but only the Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti part of the eastern section of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Basically this covers 1.5 of the 4 waves. So the first wave is Samanya Bhakti, which we have already covered. The second wave, half of it is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and half of it is Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava and Prema will be a separate course that we will cover, that will be a sequel to this course. But for now, we have been discussing the Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti section and we will continue this discussion now. A quick recap of what we have seen. We first saw what is this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and why is it a very important book in our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. We saw how it discusses about the various definitions. It's a book of definitions. So various terminologies that we use in our day-to-day discussions with devotees, what is the exact definition of those terminologies is presented in this book, and also the essential concepts about bhakti and bhakti rasa are presented in a very fundamental way. So one who understands this book Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is expected to study Bhagavatam and other such literatures through the eyes of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Then one can understand, then one can see the bhakti concepts come alive in the various pastimes of Srimad Bhagavatam. So therefore, basically, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu provides one the essential vision to actually see and understand and assimilate the pastimes of Srimad Bhagavatam in the right way. So that way, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is a very important book. In this way, we saw essentially what this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is, what nectar of devotion is, how it is a summary study of this book. We saw these things in detail. Then we started with the first wave of the eastern section of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which discussed about Samanya Bhakti. In that first we discussed Mangalacharan, means invoking auspiciousness. In that we discussed 3 topics: Vastu Nirdesh, Ashirvada and Namaskar. Vastu Nirdesh is ascertaining what is the subject matter of this book. The subject matter of this book is Krishna, but Akhila Rasamrita Murti Krishna. Krishna, the personification of all spiritual rasas. Then we discussed the theme of Namaskar, offering obeisances. Guru, Vaishnava, Bhagavan, Tinera Smaran. Grantera Arambakari Mangalacharan, Guru Vaishnava Bhagavan Tinera Smaran. So, offering obeisances to Guru, Vaishnava and Bhagavan, we saw this. And then Rupa Goswami offers a benediction to all the readers of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in the form of Ashirvad. And the Ashirvad that he gives is, whoever takes shelter of this book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, shall never be defeated by arguments or opposed to Bhakti. One will be able to firmly defend and not get disturbed by the arguments opposing Bhakti. Then he discussed about how this book is divided, Grantha Vibhag. This book is divided into 4 sections, East, South, West and North. And the eastern section, which is our subject matter, has 4 waves. The chapters are divided in the form of waves. The first wave is Samanya Bhakti, the general characteristics of Bhakti. Second wave is Sadhana Bhakti, which is divided into 2 parts, Vaidhi and Raganuga. Third is about Bhava Bhakti and fourth is about Prema Bhakti. And the southern section discusses about the Samagri Bhavas, the constituents of Rasa. What are the raw materials, the nuts and bolts of Rasa? Vibhav, Anubhav, Satvika Bhav, Sanchari Bhav and Sthayi Bhav. How they combine together to produce Rasa, the complete spiritual experience. We had a very brief discussion about that. Then the western section talks about the 5 primary rasas and the northern section talks about the 7 secondary rasas, and then the 8th topic is compatible rasas and the 9th topic is rasabhas, those rasas which do not gel very together properly. Then after Grantha Vibhag, the first theme that Srila Rupa Goswami discusses in this section is definition of Uttama Bhakti. So in this definition of Uttama Bhakti, we saw Anyabhilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karma Dhyanavratam, Anukulyena Krishnanushilanam. We had an slightly elaborate discussion of about the various factors which contribute to this definition. Anyabhilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karma Dhyanavratam, Anukulyena and Krishnanushilanam. These 4 elements of pure devotional practice we discussed. And then in the next theme, we tried to understand by evaluating our own practice of bhakti, and we tried to evaluate, does it fall within the category of Anyabhilashita Shunyam? And in this context, we discussed about the tug of war that happens in a sadhaka's life between the value system and conditioning, the Shraddha Swabhav tug of war. We had an elaborate discussion on this. We saw from various Shastric viewpoints, from Bhagavad Gita, from Bhagavatam, from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings and from some contemporary Acharyas' writings. We discussed various things, from Chaitanya Charitamrita. From all these books we discussed about this nature of this conflict that a Vaidhi sadhaka faces in his life, the existential tug of war between his conditioning and the newfound faith in pure devotional practice, and how eventually the sadhaka overcomes this tug of war and wins the competition of his practice of devotional service that we saw. And then the next theme, the last, not the last but one theme of this eastern section, first wave, are the 6 qualities of bhakti. Kleshagni Shubhada Moksha Laguta Krit Sudurlabha Sandrananda Visheshatma Sri Krishna Akarshani Chasa. So we saw about the 6 qualities, the ability of bhakti to destroy all sufferings, including prarabdha karma, aprarabdha karma, and the sinful desires which cause one to perform sinful activities, and the sinful vasanas or the impressions which inspire such sinful desires. We had an elaborate discussion on this and tried to understand how bhakti destroys all these stages. Then we discussed Shubhada, how practice of bhakti bestows all good fortune in the form of Jagat Prinanam. It makes one very compassionately disposed towards all living entities. Second, it makes one very much attractive to all living entities. Third, it bestows him with all the other good qualities. And then, practice of bhakti makes him progressively more and more happy. Susukam kartum avyayam. So, this was about Shubhada. Then we discussed Moksha Laguta Krit, how the practice of bhakti bestows a kind of such a high level of happiness which makes the bliss of liberation seem very insignificant. Moksha Laguta Krit. And then this is at the level of bhava. And at the level of bhava, we saw how for two reasons this bhava bhakti is very rare. It is very rare because for achieving swarga, material happiness, siddhis, the ashta siddhi, and for achieving liberation also, there are many ways of attaining. One could attain by karma, jnana, yoga, charity and austerity and all these things one could attain. But to attain bhava, there is only one path, that is uttama bhakti, sadhana bhakti. There is only one path, therefore it is very rare. And to gain entrance into that path is possible only through the association of devotees, which is also rare. So therefore bhakti is sudurlabha, one reason. Second reason why it is sudurlabha is even if a person has taken up to practice of pure devotional service, Krishna will wait sufficiently before offering bhava bhakti, because Krishna would have to be controlled by such a person. Then the fifth quality is Sandrananda Visheshatma, which manifests at the stage of prema, where the practitioner experiences a kind of condensed spiritual bliss. That is Sandrananda Visheshatma. And then Shri Krishna Akarshini. The love of that devotee is so powerful that it has the capacity to attract Krishna along with all his associates. Shri Krishna Akarshini. Kritva harim premabhajam priyavarga samanvitam bhaktir vashikaroti iti Shri Krishna Akarshini mata. It makes Krishna and his associates mad after that prema that he has for Krishna. So in this way, bhakti is Shri Krishna Akarshini. In this way, we saw these 6 qualities of bhakti. The 6 benefits that the practitioner gains by practicing Uttama Bhakti. Then, the last theme that we discussed in the first wave of Eastern section was the qualification to understand bhakti. Swalpapi ruchireva syad bhakti tattvava bodhika yuktistu kevala naiva yadasya apratishtata. We saw how little bit of taste or little bit of shraddha in the subject matter which one attains by Agyat Sukriti, by accumulation of Agyat Sukriti, that is the only qualification for taking up to bhakti. But by mere material intelligence, material logic, one cannot understand bhakti. So this was mentioned to be the qualification for bhakti. Swalpa ruchi, swalpapi ruchireva syad bhakti tattvava bodhika yuktistu kevala naiva. In this way, we concluded the first wave of Eastern section. Then we started the second wave, which spoke about sadhana bhakti. The first theme that we discussed in sadhana bhakti was, is it 3 types of bhakti or 3 stages of bhakti? We always keep hearing about sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti and prema bhakti. Are these 3 stages or 3 types? We had an elaborate discussion. We understood it was 3 types. Why 3 types? Why not only 2? Because for clarity purposes. Because bhava does not completely have all the characteristics of prema also. So therefore it cannot be clubbed with prema. And bhava certainly does not have all the characteristics similar to sadhana bhakti also. So therefore bhava bhakti is unique, having some qualities similar to sadhana bhakti and some qualities similar to prema. So therefore, because of its not being able to be clubbed with either prema or sadhana. It has to be addressed as a unique case for clarity purposes. In this way, we understood three types of bhakti. And then the next theme that we discussed was definition of sadhana bhakti. Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhavasa sadhana bida nitya siddhasya bhavasya prakatyam hridi sadhyata. We understood the definition of sadhana bhakti as engagement of the senses in the activities of Krishna consciousness for the purpose of attaining the goal of bhava. So sadhana bhakti, very simple definition. When there is engagement of senses in the activities of ninefold devotional practice with the goal of attaining bhava, that is called as sadhana bhakti. And then we saw this sadhana bhakti is of two types, Vaidhi sadhana bhakti and Raganuga sadhana bhakti. And in that first we saw the definition of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. Yatra raga anavaptatvat pravrittir upajayate shasanenaiva shastrasya sa Vaidhi bhakti ruchyate. What is Vaidhi bhakti? Yatra raga anavaptatvat, where there is no spontaneous greed that is driving the practice of a sadhaka, then how is he getting, where is he getting the impetus to perform his sadhana? Pravrittir upajayate, where is his sadhana getting the impetus from? Shasanenaiva shastrasya, from the shastrasya shasan, from the injunctions of the scriptures. When that inspires his practice of sadhana, that kind of practice is called as Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. What are the results of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti? Akama, sarvakamova, mokshakama udaradehi, tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether one has no material desires, all material desires, the desire for mukti, whatever may be one's desire, a person by practice of Vaidhi sadhana can attain it. But the highest result that one can attain is prema. This is what we saw. Then the next theme that we discussed was qualification for taking up to Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, which we already saw before, that is Shraddha. Yak kenapi atibhagyena jata shraddosya sevane nati sakto na vairagya bhagasyam adhikaryasau. Srila Rupa Goswami says, the qualification for taking up to Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is jata shraddo, shraddha, faith. Asya sevane, in serving Krishna, in performing bhakti. How does one get that faith in serving Krishna? Kenapi atibhagyena, somehow or other by good fortune. How does the living entity receive that good fortune? Through the medium of a devotee. When the devotee comes in the life of that personality with an intense desire to shower his compassion upon that person, and in that way when he facilitates that personality to appreciate something connected to Krishna, then the living entity gains, by that appreciation, gains what is called as Agyata Sukriti, and when that Agyata Sukriti accumulates, it manifests into what is called as Shraddha. So what is the symptom of that Shraddha? Nati sakto na vairagya. He is neither too attached to enjoying this material world like a karmi. He is nor so detached from this material world like a jnani. He is willing to engage his senses in the service of Krishna. That is the symptom of the faith that one receives, the pure devotional faith that one receives through the accumulation of Agyat Sukriti, which one gets by the Vaishnav Kripa. So this is the qualification for taking up to Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, which is Shraddha. And then based on the Shraddha, there are three types of Shraddhavan, one who possesses this Shraddha. So they are called the three adhikaris of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. Uttama adhikari, Madhyama adhikari and Kanishta adhikari. The Uttama adhikari is defined as Shastre yuktau cha nipuna sarvata dridanischayah prauda shraddho adhikariyah sabhaktau uttamo mata. The Uttama adhikari is one who is Shastre yuktau cha nipuna. who is expert in the knowledge of the Shastras, who is expert in Shastra Yukti. Shastra Yukti means the underlying logic of the Shastras, the thread that holds the various seemingly disjointed sections and verses of that chapter, of that book together. What is that logic, underlying logic of that book that they have understood? And it is not just theoretical understanding. Sarvata Dridanischaya. This understanding produces in him a firm determination to practice the Sambandha, Abhideya and Prayojan. The practice the Abhideya, and he is very clear about his goal, that is Prayojan, and the Sambandha Gyan is also clear. That is the meaning of Sarvata Dridanischaya. And this proper understanding creates in him a deep faith. Prauda Shraddha means deep faith. So it is not just breadth. Oh, I know this, I know this, I know this, I know this, I know this book, all. It's not just the breadth of knowledge, but the depth of knowledge which he has gained through personal practice. He has personally practiced the injunctions of the scriptures, and those injunctions he has realized the results which these scriptures have promised. So therefore, Prauda Shraddho Adhikariyah Sabhakta Uttamo Mata. So this is an Uttam Adhikari. Who is a Madhyam Adhikari? Yes, Shastradishu Anipuna Shraddhavan Satu Madhyama. He may be not that expert in the Shastras as an Uttam Adhikari, but Shraddhavan. Even if a materialistic opponent or one following other non-devotional philosophy challenges him, he may not be able to properly defend the science of bhakti by quoting various verses, because he may not necessarily be so well read, but he has firm trust that the acharyas have already established it. They have established it right, so I don't have to worry about it. So that faith he has in the Guru Sishya Parampara. Rupa Goswami has established, Jiva Goswami has established, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada and the Vartaman Acharyas, they have established the path. I have not studied completely, that's why I am not able to defend. In this way, he does not lose his faith. This is Madhyam Adhikari. And who is a Kanishta Adhikari? Yobhavet Komala Shraddha Sa Kanishto Nigadyate. The Kanishta Adhikari is one who has very weak faith, which can be shaken by a powerful materialistic opponent, because he has not studied the Shastras only. He has some faith in the Shastras, but he does not know the content of the Shastras. So therefore, when one challenges him, he becomes so scared that he becomes temporarily shaken. But eventually, he starts accepting the ultimate conclusions of the Shastras based on his faith in his Guru, in this way. So in this way, three Adhikaris, based on their understanding of the Shastras and their application of Shastras, they are divided into these three categories we discussed on this subject matter. Then the seventh topic that we discussed in the second wave was that how desires for bhukti and mukti obstruct bhakti. Bhukti mukti spruha yavat pishachi hridi vartate tavat bhakti sukasyatra katam abhyudayo bhavet. When these witches of bhukti and mukti are haunting the heart of a sadhaka, how can the pure desire to serve Krishna manifest in that heart? So of the two desires for bhukti and mukti, we saw that how this desire for mukti is much more dangerous. The desire to escape suffering. I don't want to suffer is such a powerful influence in the heart of the sadhaka that it acts as a major obstacle in his taking up to bhakti. So we discussed this theme elaborately. Many verses have been quoted by Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu to establish this point, that how the desire for mukti is detrimental for the progress of a sadhaka in the path of bhakti. And then we saw that actually there are gradations in mukti. Gradations in mukti spruha. One may desire for pure prema. I want only service. You put me in Swarga, Apavarga, Narakeshu api tulyartha darshinaha. You put me in Swarga, Naraka or anywhere, even in Brahma Jyoti, I don't mind, as long as you can give me some service. Because there is no service available in Brahma Jyoti, they don't want to accept it. Otherwise, Naraka also they are willing to accept, because they see some scope for preaching there. But Krishna will not deprive those devotees of Vaikuntha. He will give them Vaikuntha or the spiritual world that is there. So, this is first category. And the second category are those who primarily want to serve only, but they have little bit of desire for enjoying the Sukha and Aishwarya of Vaikuntha. So, this is called as Sukhaishwaryottara Mukti. Second category. The lowest category is, this is Prema Sevottara Mukti. They have primary desire for serving Krishna. They have little bit desire for enjoying the Sukha and Aishwarya of Vaikuntha. So they are called as Prema Seva Uttara Mukti. Prema Sevottara Mukti. The third category are the lowest, who primarily are interested in the Sukha and Aishwarya of Vaikuntha, for which they very diligently serve Krishna also. But the primary desire is Sukha and Aishwarya of Vaikuntha. They are called Sukhaishwaryottara Muktas. So in this way there are three categories of people who attain spiritual liberation. Sukhaishwaryottara Mukti, higher than that is Prema Sevottara Mukti, and higher than that are the Harau Ekantina. Ekantino yasyana kanchanartam vanchanti evai bhagavat prapanna. So, as Gajendra says, such people are the highest. They don't desire any liberation at all. They desire only service. They are called as Harau Ekantinas, Prema Bhaktas. Then we saw of these various categories of Prema Bhaktas, who might be worshippers of Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narasimha, Rama, and all the Vamana, and all these various forms, including Lord Narayan. But of all the Prema Bhaktas, worshippers of Govinda, Krishna and Vrindavan, they are the best. So, we saw this theme. Tatrapi ekantinam sreshta Govinda Hritamanasa Yesham Shrisha Prasadopi Mano Hartum na Shaknuyat. Of all these people, that of all the Prema Bhaktas, that person whose heart has been stolen by Krishna and Vrindavan is the topmost. And for such a person, even the sweetness or the kindness of Lord Narayan does not attract his heart. Siddhantastu abhedepi Shrisha Krishna Swarupayoho Rasena Utkrishyate Krishna Rupam Esha Rasastitihi. According to Siddhanta, actually there is no difference between Krishna and Lord Narayan. But when you consider rasa, the sweetness of Krishna and Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's devotees is unparalleled. Therefore, those whose hearts have been captured by Krishna, they are not attracted by the kindness of anyone else. And then the last theme that we discussed before we ended the first part 1 of our discussion was how there is no material disqualification for practice of bhakti. However, from a material point of view, one may be fallen. Kirata hunandra pulinda pulkasha abira shumba yavanaha kasadaya ye anyecha papa yadapashraya shraya shuddyanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha. So all these various kinds of most fallen people, one cannot say that they are unqualified to practice bhakti, because bhakti requires no material qualification. So Rupa Goswami says, Nrmatrasya adhikarita. The only qualification is he has to be a human. Shastratah shruyate bhaktau nrmatrasya adhikarita. If he is a human being, he is qualified. Just that he needs some Agyat Sukriti and Shraddha. But that anyone can get, any human being can get. Valmiki got, he was a butcher by profession. Mrigari got, he was a hunter by profession. So many devotees we have seen in history did not have any qualification, but by the touch of a devotee, they got the necessary qualification. So therefore, from a material point of view, such people are unworthy of even seeing. The most sophisticated Brahmanas, just by thinking about them, they would go and take a bath. Such people can practice bhakti. There is no material disqualification. So this was the last theme that we discussed, and this is a brief recap. We will no longer recap what we have covered in the first section. So this is the last time, because we are starting after a reasonably long break. I took this opportunity to do a small recap. So these themes we will not revisit. So what the theme that we are starting today, that will be the theme from which even if we may have to do some on some days subsequent recaps, we will start from where we start today, right now. So we have covered about 10 themes in the second wave of eastern section of this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So now we will start the 11th theme, very, very important theme and often misunderstood theme of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, which is what are the qualities expected, what are the duties expected of a qualified practitioner of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So we all, I am pretty sure almost 100% of whoever is sitting in front of the screen and watching this presentation would agree that they are practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. By now that must have been clear at least. If that is not clear, then till now whatever I have presented is a failure actually. But I am hopeful that most of you who are sitting in front of the screen would have come to the conclusion that yes, I am practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Now, Rupa Goswami is going to present this theme of what is expected of you, what is expected of us as Vaidhi Sadhakas. What should we do, what should we not do? This is very, very important. So therefore, I am sure we will start now and cover some portion, and we will continue this portion tomorrow also. Okay, because this is, I have prepared some elaborate discussion on this theme, because this is often misunderstood theme. So, someone may say, my dear Rupa Goswami, you have mentioned that bhakti has to be anyabhilashita shunyam. One should not have any other desire other than the desire to please Krishna. And you have also in the previous theme, the last theme that you covered, you have mentioned that everyone is qualified to practice bhakti. Any human being is qualified, there is no material disqualification. Okay. But I see that there is a problem with this proposal. Someone may say, this is a Purva Paksha argument. Purva Paksha means the opponent party who may not accept the conclusions of pure devotional literatures. They may argue, oh, there is a problem here. What is the problem? You say that everyone is qualified for practicing bhakti. Every human being is qualified for practicing bhakti. So what is the problem? If everyone qualified for bhakti, in the name of practicing bhakti will neglect the varnashram duties, then isn't it sinful? Because the Shastras say that if you neglect your dharma, it is a sin. Krishna himself says, Shreyan swadharmo viguna paradharmo swanushthitat swadharme hi nidanam shreyah paradharmo bhayavaha. Shreyan swadharmo vigunat. O Arjuna, it is better to perform your own prescribed duties improperly than to perform someone else's prescribed duty properly. So in Bhagavad Gita, a good portion of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna uses to emphasize the importance of practicing one's varnashram prescribed duties. Now, if someone feels that, oh, I am qualified for bhakti, I don't have to practice the varnashram duties, and if he neglects the varnashram duties, is it not a sin? Because Krishna has told, Swadharmehi nidanam shreyah, steadiness in practicing one's own duties is much better, and to perform someone else's prescribed duty is bhayavaha, it is dangerous. And to not perform one's prescribed duty is also dangerous, Krishna has said. Mate sangostu akarmani. Don't be attached to non-performing your prescribed duties also, Arjuna. This is an instruction given by Krishna to Arjuna. Now, if a devotee, in the name of practicing bhakti, if he gives up his varnashram duties, is he not committing a sinful activity? If they do not perform their prescribed duties and simply perform bhakti, then won't all people be engaged in sinful activity? That being the case, how can they become pure? On one side, they are practicing bhakti to become pure. On the other side, they are becoming sinful by neglecting their varnashram duties. Won't both of these cancel each other? So, should they try to perform some kind of prayaschitta, atonement to rectify those sins which they are accumulating by neglecting their varnashram duty? What is this understanding? Should devotees perform the varnashram duties or not? If they don't perform, is it not a sin? If they commit a sin, should they perform prayaschitta, atonements? What is this understanding? This is a very vital subject matter. We need to understand this very clearly. Rupa Goswami answers this question very categorically. He says, Ananushthanato dosho bhakti anganam prajayate. Na karmanam akaranad esha bhakti adhikarinam. Nishiddha acharato daivat prayaschittam tu na uchitam. Iti Vaishnava Shastranam rahasyam tadvidam matam. He says, Ananushthanato dosho bhakti anganam prajayate. Bhakti, esha bhakti adhikarinam. For persons who are qualified for practicing Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, which is all of us, dosha prajayate. We will be at fault when bhakti anganam akaranad. If we fail to perform the essential limbs of devotional service, the 64 limbs, which is the next theme that we are going to discuss, of the 64 limbs, the first 20 and the last 5 limbs, 25 limbs are said to be essential limbs, non-negotiable limbs. You cannot choose not to perform these limbs. You have to perform. So, of these 64, if one neglects to perform these 25 limbs, it is considered dosha, fault. Na karmanam akaranad. But he is not at fault for failing to perform the varnashram duties. This needs to be noted. Okay. Daivat. If he by chance, nishiddha acharato, he happens to commit some sinful activity due to some past vasanas or due to some past offenses, if he engages in some sinful activities, prayaschittam tu na uchitam, he should not resort to performing the karmakandiya prayaschitta. Which means, we may go to an astrologer and he may say, oh, you know what, you are suffering is because you have very bad karma. And I see here, this problem is there. So you do some Kala Sarpa dosha or Narayana Nagabali, or you worship this demigod, that demigod, like that he may suggest. Because you have bad eyesight, you should worship Surya Dev, so because he controls the eyesight and things like that. So he may offer such kinds of prayaschitta. But Rupa Goswami says, prayaschittam tu na uchitam. it is inappropriate for a devotee to try to perform such prayaschitta. Then how will the problem be rectified? We will try to see. He says, Iti Vaishnava Shastranam Rahasyam Tadvidam Matam. This is the opinion of those who have understood the secret of Vaishnava Shastras. Iti Vaishnava Shastranam Rahasyam Tadvidam Matam. So, therefore, we will try to summarize in a few seconds, just some additional details. So, what we have seen in this verse till now is, first thing, for a person qualified for practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, Ananushthanato Bhaktyanganam Ananushthanato Doshaha Prajayate. If he fails to perform the essential limbs of Bhakti, he is at fault. Na karmanam akaranat. He is not at fault for failing to perform the Varnashram duties. Nishiddha acharato daivat. If by chance he performs some unmentionable activity, he says, prayaschittam tu na uchitam. He should not resort to the karmakandiya prayaschitta. These 3 points we have seen. Then, Srila Jiva Goswami explains, it is a fault if those qualified for bhakti fail to perform the required angas of bhakti, such as observance of Ekadashi or Janmashtami, like that. We will see the first 20 limbs and the last 5 limbs, what they are. Last 5 limbs most of you might know, which is studying Bhagavatam, chanting the holy name, and serving the devotees, staying in dham, and worship of deities. These 5. And first 20 also, they are called the door to bhakti. So, only by following these 20 you can actually enter into performing the other limbs of bhakti. It is not a fault if they do not perform Varnashram activities. This is a slightly controversial thing because Prabhupada has emphasized so much on Varnashram. So, this needs to be understood properly in the right sense, and I hope over the next 20 minutes that we have today and tomorrow, by the end of this discussion, we will have a fairly good understanding of what Prabhupada wanted and what Rupa Goswami is presenting here, and how is there any contradiction or not, we will try to understand. Okay. Hopefully, it would be a fruitful exercise. You please offer your prayers. So, he is saying that it is not a fault that if they do not perform the Varnashram activities. If they commit forbidden activities because of the influence of previous Vaishnava aparadha, or maybe some vasanas, sinful vasanas are still lingering around, atonement is not required. Why? Since these pure devotees do not have a natural tendency for sinful actions. Again, don't tell that, oh, this is talking about pure devotees. That is why in the very beginning, when we discussed the definition of pure devotional service, we already discussed that whether we are practicing pure devotional service or not. And more so, because this section is talking not about Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti, this section is talking about Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti only. So, it is talking about all of us. So, pure devotee here means one who has pure faith, but he may still be struggling with anarthas. Therefore, a person struggling on the stage of anartha nivritti may still have pure faith. That was the discussion that we had in the very beginning of this course. Hopefully, you remember that discussion. He says, Bhakti alone acts as atonement. So, one need not feel, oh, what if I don't wear that yellow stone or green stone or red stone that the astrologer has told? What if I do not worship this planet? What if I do not perform this atonement to pacify Shani or Rahu or Ketu? Or what if I do not worship that sun god? What if I do not perform this Narayana Nagabali or Kala Sarpa Dosha and all these various kinds of prayaschitta that the astrologer is recommending. Rupa Goswami says, no need. You just sincerely practice your bhakti. That sincere practice of bhakti alone acts as the atonement. There is no fault if a person does not perform all the 64 limbs. One need not perform all the 64 limbs because it is not possible to parallelly perform all 64. The essential angas are the first 20 and the last 5. So that one should not be negligent or neglectful to perform those 25 limbs. So therefore, to summarize what we have seen till now, 4 points essentially we have understood. If you cannot coherently recollect whatever we have seen till now in this section, I am just summarizing it in 4 simple points. Rupa Goswami is telling, a person qualified for practicing Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, he is at fault if he does not practice the essential limbs of bhakti, which means first 20 and last 5. Second, he is not at fault for failing to perform the varnashram duties. Third, if he commits a forbidden activity, he should not be resorting to the varnashram, the karmakandiya prayaschitta. And the fourth, bhakti alone acts as the atonement for all the forbidden activities that he has performed. So these are the 4 essential points. Please remember, eventually Srila Rupa Goswami is going to give proofs to substantiate these points. But for now, before we go to see those substantiation, we will try to understand a few essential things about this varnashram. So, what does it mean to not perform varnashram duties? Is a devotee irresponsible or ungrateful by neglecting to perform the varnashram duties? Or what exactly does it mean that a devotee need not perform varnashram duties? What is the meaning? Because this is often misunderstood thing, and people generally tend to take a very extreme stance. Someone says, no, you can never give up varnashram. Another one says, no, you should not practice varnashram. But we need to understand what exactly is Rupa Goswami indicating here. So what is going to follow now is a rigorous exercise we are going to do based on the quotations from Bhagavatam, essentially from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and the commentaries on of the Acharyas on these Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita verses, and try to decipher what exactly is Rupa Goswami telling. Did Arjuna really follow the instruction of Sarvadharman Parityajya? Because at the end of it, Krishna told, O Arjuna, give up all the dharma, including varnashram dharma, and fight, and just surrender unto me, he told. But after hearing all that, it is not seen that actually Arjuna gave up his Kshatriya dharma. He fought the battle, which is his Varna dharma. And regarding his ashram, he was a grihastha. After the battle, he very nicely took care of his family members. So it is not seen that he gave up his ashrama dharma also. Neither did he give up his Varna dharma, nor did he give up his ashrama dharma. But Krishna did instruct him, Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. So now, Arjuna's credibility is at stake. Did he actually follow this instruction of Krishna or not? If yes, then how are we going to justify that he fought on the battlefield and took care of his family? If you say no, then are we supposed to glorify Arjuna as a great devotee? Should he be a role model for us? Should he be glorified so much in the scriptures? This is a very important point to ponder. We will try to understand this subject matter. Or was this instruction of Sarvadharman Parityajya Was it a clarion call for a change of paradigm? Did he actually ask Arjuna to give up Varnashram duties? Or what exactly was it? Or did he ask him to change the paradigm? If you say that he asked him to change the paradigm, what is that change of paradigm? A very beautiful verse spoken by Srila Raghunath Das Goswami in his book Manas Siksha. He simplifies this whole understanding of Sarvadharman Parityajya for us in such a simple way. What is this Sarvadharman Parityajya? He says, Na dharmam na dharmam shruti gana niruktam kila kuru vraje radha krishna prachura paricharyami hatanu shachi sunu nandishwara pati sutatve guruvaram Mukunda preshtatve smara paramajasram nanumana. He says, O mind, O mana, na dharmam kuru. He says, do not perform dharma. See, Hare, why is Raghunath Das Goswami speaking like this? Because if I don't perform dharma, then it will be adharma. But then Srila Raghunath Das Goswami says, Na adharmam kuru. Don't perform adharma also. Now, how is it possible? How is it possible that one can neither perform dharma nor perform adharma? Then what should I do? He says, Vraje Radha Krishna Prachura Paricharyam Ihatanu. He says, just stay here in Vrindavan and try to think in terms of how I can worship Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. Prachura Paricharya, how I can abundantly serve Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. That should be your thought process. So therefore, basically what he is telling is, he is not asking him to give up dharma, give up adharma. He is telling, give up the thought of thinking that I will do everything that is dharmic and I will reject everything that is adharmic. Is it dharmic? Is it dharma? Is it dharma? Is it dharma? Stop thinking in that way. Is it adharmic? Is this adharmic? Is this adharmic? He says, stop thinking in this way. Then how should I think? He says, oh, is it pleasing to Krishna? Is it pleasing to Radharani? Is it pleasing to my Guru? He says, start thinking in this way. He is not, Krishna is not asking Arjuna to reject the activities of Varnashram. He is asking him to start acting on the platform of what is Anukul for Bhakti and what is Pratikul for Bhakti. Don't think in terms of dharma and adharma. Start thinking in terms of what is Anukul for Bhakti and what is Pratikul for Bhakti. This is the paradigm shift that Krishna is asking Arjuna to make when he asks, O Arjuna, Sarvadharman Parityajya, Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja means what? Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja means Sharanagati. Perform Sharanagati to me. Surrender unto me. What are the principles of Sharanagati? The first two principles, Anukulyasa Sankalpo, Pratikulyasa Varjanam, Rakshati iti Vishwaso, Goptripve Varanam Tata, Dainyam Atmanivedanam. These are the 6 principles. So when he says, Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja, surrender unto me, what he means is, now shift your paradigm. You should not think in terms of, is it according to my Varna and Ashrama? No. Start thinking in terms of, will it please my Guru? Will it please Krishna? Will it please Radharani? Is it favorable for my progress in bhakti? That should be the paradigm in which we should start thinking. So therefore, coming back to the question, did Arjuna really follow the instruction of Sarvadharman Parityajya? Because apparently he did not give up his Varna Dharma of fighting and Ashrama Dharma of taking care of his family. He did follow. How? Prabhupada always mentions that Arjuna did not want to fight on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. That is what the whole first chapter is, Arjuna giving various reasons for not fighting. He gives 6 reasons to not fight. But then after hearing Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada clearly mentions, Arjuna did not want to fight, but after hearing Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna fought the battlefield of Kurukshetra because Krishna wanted him to fight. There is not a single time that Prabhupada says Arjuna fought because he was a Kshatriya. He says Arjuna fought because Krishna wanted him to fight. Which means Arjuna had changed this paradigm. This is the paradigm of Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. He was no longer thinking in terms of, is this my dharma or is this adharma? Those were his considerations before the narration of Bhagavad Gita started. After the narration of Bhagavad Gita ended, he says, Karishye Vachanam Tava, tell me Krishna, what do you want me to do? Anukulyasa Sankalpo, Pratikulyasa Varjanam. It was on that platform that Arjuna fought the battlefield and not on the platform of dharma. And it was on that platform that he took care of his family, because all his family members were great Vaishnavas. So he was doing Vaishnava Seva by taking care of his family. So therefore, from an activity, one cannot say whether that is an activity performed on the platform of Varnashrama or Bhakti. So therefore, based on qualifications, we have 3 kinds of people. As you can see in this table here, you may have a karmi or a materialist, or you may have a karma yogi or a dharmic person, and you may have a devotee, a bhakta. So these are the 3 categories of people. So all these 3 categories of people, they accept certain things and reject certain things. And there is a reason, there is a paradigm on which they function. Based on a particular paradigm, they accept certain things, reject certain things. Accept certain people, reject certain people. Accept certain situations, reject certain situations. On what basis? For a materialist, he says, Raga Sankalpo, Dvesha Varjanam. Whatever I like, I will accept. Whatever I don't like, I will reject. So this is the platform of a materialist. Raga Sankalpo, Dvesha Varjanam. What is the platform of functioning of a karma yogi or a dharmic person? Dharmasya Sankalpo, Adharmasya Varjanam. Whatever is dharmic, according to my varna and ashrama, I will accept. Whatever is adharmic, I will reject. And a devotee, what is his value system? Bhakti Anukulyasya Sankalpo. Whatever is favorable for my execution of bhakti, I will accept. Bhakti Pratikulyasya Varjanam. Whatever is unfavorable for my practice of bhakti, I will reject. And what is the pramana? The pramana for the materialist, or the proof, or what is the basis of making such decisions? The basis of making such decisions for a materialist is his own experience. Based on his experience, he liked certain things, he did not like certain other things, so he would reject things that he liked and he would accept things. So he would accept things that he liked and reject that he would not like. And what is the pramana for a dharmic person or a karma yogi? Dharma Shastras. The various Manusmriti and other such Shastras, they speak about what are the duties of a Kshatriya, Brahmana, Vaishya, Shudra, of a Sannyasi, Brahmachari, Grihastha, and all these things are presented in the Dharma Shastras. So his primary pramana for action are the Dharma Shastras. And what is the pramana for a Bhakti yogi in choosing Anukulyasya Sankalpo and Pratikulyasya Varjanam, the Bhakti Shastras like Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, Upadeshamrit, all these books are the basis on which a devotee decides whether I should do it or not do it. So in this way you have three categories of people, the karmi, the karma yogi and the bhakti yogi, or the karmi, the dharmic person and the devotee. So therefore you have this very complex interplay. Let us to begin with take only the case of the karma yogi and the bhakta, or the dharmic person and the bhakta. What you see on the screen is a Venn diagram. For those of you who might be wondering what is a Venn diagram, please scratch your memory. Maybe in your 10th standard or 11th standard, you must have studied set theory. So A intersection B, A union B, all those things you would have studied. So here you see two circles, the Varnashram circle and the Bhakti circle. The Varnashram circle functions with Dharmasya Sankalpo, Adharmasya Varjanam as the center. Around that the person keeps rotating. Is it dharma, is it adharma? Is it dharma, is it adharma? Is it dharma, it is adharma. And you see the right hand side circle, the Bhakti circle, the devotee. He rotates whatever activities. Is it anukul or pratikul? Is it anukul or pratikul? Is it anukul for my bhakti or pratikul for my bhakti? With that, on that paradigm he rotates. And both these people, while performing activities, you see that intersection of these two circles. The intersection of these two circles indicate activities which can be performed both under Varnashram or Bhakti. It depends on the paradigm. Like for example, a mother taking care of her child. So one may say, oh, clearly Grihastha Dharma, Varnashram. But a devotee may see, oh no, not necessarily. The child is also a potential devotee. So I will give him such a wonderful experience that he grows up to be a very nice devotee. With that understanding, if the mother takes care of the child, will that fall under Varnashram or Bhakti? So therefore, the activity in itself does not decide whether it is an Varnashram activity or an activity of Bhakti. I will give you an example. Once in Shri Shri Radha Gopinath temple in Mumbai, Chowpatty, in the early days when the temple had just started, one of the earliest disciples of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj, she had a small child, 3 or 4-year-old child, and she was Brahmin initiated and she was cooking in the kitchen for the deities. And one day His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj was passing through the deity kitchen. He saw this Mataji in cooking and he called for her and he asked, "What are you doing here?" And Mataji replied, "Maharaj, I am cooking for the deities. I am performing devotional service." So Maharaj said, "From today your service has been changed. You have to stay at home and take care of your child. That is your devotional service." So the understanding of our acharyas about what constitutes bhakti, what is the scope of bhakti, is very broad. Someone may say anything beyond the 9 limbs is not bhakti. No. Someone may say anything beyond 64 mentioned in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is not bhakti. No. Actually, if one understands the deeper import of the 64 items, some of the items, they have a very broad scope. And in fact, Rupa Goswami says that actually in Hari Bhakti Vilas, my brother Sanatan Goswami has mentioned lakhs and lakhs of limbs. But of that, I am selecting only the 64 important limbs. And I am summarizing many of those limbs within the 64, like that he mentions. So therefore, what constitutes, what makes a particular activity devotional is the paradigm, is the intention, is the thought process which drives that activity. Someone may be practicing it because it is anukul for my bhakti or pratikul for my bhakti, then any activity which is performed in that mood, like in the early days, devotees were distributing books, which is, one may say, oh, this is Vaishya Dharma, Krishi, Goraksha, Vanijyam. This is Vanijyam. They are doing Vaishya Vritti. This is not Vaishya Vritti. This is Vritti of a devotee. What are they doing? They are executing the desire of the spiritual master. Are they doing a Vaishya's job? No. They are doing the job of a devotee. Or someone else may be doing Patan, Patan, Yajan, Yajan, Dana Pratigraha. Someone may be teaching Bhakti Shastras for the devotees so that they can nicely be situated in their practice of devotional service. Are they doing the duty of a Brahmana or a devotee? It depends. Whether that person who is doing it, he is doing it in the mood of dharmasya sankalpo, adharmasya varjanam. Oh, I am a Brahmana, I should be engaged in my Brahmanical duties. With that mood is he doing, or is he doing, oh, this will be pleasing to my Guru. This is a devotional activity, let me do it. So therefore, it is the mood which decides whether that activity is varnashram or bhakti. Okay. So, this is just a glimpse that I have given you. We have already passed the allotted time of 1 hour, so I don't want to stretch it any further. But tomorrow we will analyze and try to understand this section little more thoroughly. Okay. But I am sure by now you would have got at least a glimpse of what is the theme that we are trying to, the theme that Srila Rupa Goswami is trying to present here. So thank you very much for your patient listening. So I will wait for your association tomorrow so that we can continue this discussion from where we left. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.